Hello and welcome back to the next episode of the Surrogacy Space. My name is Marla Neufeld. I am a surrogacy and reproductive attorney at Greenspoon Marder, and I have a very special guest joining me today, one of my very special colleagues who also works at Greenspoon Marder in our employment department. We have Myrna Maysonet with us today. If you'd like to say hello and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, everybody. I am grateful to be here.
Yes, thank you for your time and for sharing your professional and personal experiences today. So would just love to introduce you to the community today of kind of what you do as an attorney, your legal practice area, and what you do at Greenspoon Marder.
Actually, my name is, Myrna Maysonet. I am an employment lawyer. I represent corporations all over the United States. In addition to that, I am also the Chief Diversity Officer with Greenspoon Marder.
Awesome. Wonderful. And so that's your professional life. And in your personal life, if you wouldn't mind sharing about your family, your beautiful kids, and your family crew.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Actually, that's actually why I started talking to you. I actually fell in love with a woman at 33 years old, and we decided to, build a family. And during those times, you couldn't get married, and eventually we were able to. But no matter how much we loved each other, biology just didn't work at this point of two people, two women getting together and having a kid. So we decided to do, enlist the help of some reproductive, doctors. And the first time Rebecca got pregnant was in 2015. Unfortunately, as happens to a lot of females, we found out. Uh, she had a miscarriage within the first, trimester, and it was heartbreaking. Then we started the journey where you guided us and helped us, overcome a lot of issues because, the miscarriage is something that happens, but people don't, discuss it, and it does affect you, and it has an emotional toll. Then we consulted again with our, reproductive medicine doctor, Dr. Patel, and she guided us through the IVF, uh, you know, process, and eventually we did the process and inserted, what we believed just was a single embryo. Unbeknownst to us, in like week 12 or so, I said, hey, let's go ahead and take some pictures of the baby because, once you get released from that process, you don't get a lot of scans. They assume that it's a, normal pregnancy. And when we went, the lady told us, well, you didn't pay for twins. And I go, what are you talking about? And she goes, you have twins. And I go, what? No, we
Wow.
don't have twins. I know for a fact we don't. And she says, well, look at here. And then she goes, baby A and baby B. And then she sent us
Wow.
to the gynecologist. So it was a surprise. And I was not only, that's the only time that Rebecca says I was out of words because I couldn't comprehend what was
I can
happening.
imagine. I mean, getting that kind of news is exciting, but also just so unexpected when you put in one embryo.
Oh yeah, it was, and she also told us something that I knew kind of we were having some problems at that point because she's like, I can't find the membrane for them, and the girls. We came later to find out that the girls were sharing the same placenta and the same, sac. So
Hmm.
made it a high, you know, uh, high risk pregnancy, but it was all worth it.
Yeah.
And now we have Emma and Grace, and they're 6 years old.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I know it's 6 years later, but huge congratulations. And, I have twins as well from surrogacy, and, twins is an amazing thing. I know, medically it's not recommended, and you didn't do this to put two in because of the different risks that go along with it. But the fact that it all worked out, it's just an amazing thing. It truly is a blessing.
Yeah, we're
So
super excited. Yeah, it worked out.
yeah. So, I mean, just in general, as far as your fertility journey with Rebecca to have the girls, there's a lot of questions that come up, amongst anyone going through this, but as a same-sex female couple, like, how do you make certain decisions? Like, how did you find your sperm donor? Like, what considerations went into that?
Well, that is actually the first thing, obviously when you get married or, I link this, I liken this to, when you go out there, you get pregnant and it's a surprise with somebody that don't know, you have to, and you're pregnant, you have to think of biology, medical, and all that stuff. For
Mhm.
same-sex couples, especially females, you know one of the parents, but you don't know the other parent. So there are very different avenues that you can explore. Obviously, a known donor is always something that people can explore. And if that is available to you and you want to do that, then you have to consider that. The problem with that is that you're gonna have to have somebody that has to recognize that that is your child and not theirs, even though the biological aspect is there. uh, then there's some things called sperm banks, and you literally it's, I mean it was a little depressing sometimes, but you literally can go and look at the person, you figure out, they give you all kinds of information,
Mhm.
uh, such as education, height, weight, potential issues, things of that nature. And you literally try to find somebody that, um, looks like you and things of that nature. And you make that a decision as a couple. You talk to, obviously we didn't go into this not knowing and not caring about this. It took us a long time, and we did a
Absolutely.
lot of research. We talked. You have to be completely honest about that. And eventually we made a decision, and I think it was the best decision that we could make. But what we did learn is, if you're going to use a sperm, whether it's in a sperm, known donor or not, you have to actually enter into a contract,
Mhm.
uh, where the person releases those rights. It's required by the fertility doctors, or
Yep.
whoever is helping you. And that is something, I believe you helped us too, with that, where we had to have somebody sign and say, I relinquish all the rights,
Yes.
as a parent. And then once you do that, then you can go ahead and proceed.
Right.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
it's
super
it's
important to have the right documentation in place. In fact, there's not a lot of case law in Florida regarding litigation over reproductive issues, but sperm donation is the most litigated topic. So it is critical to have the right documentation in place to clarify, that the donor relinquishes, as you said, and you have all rights to use the embryo and, create your family.
exactly. And like everything, whoever you're gonna parent with, whether biological or not, you have to make sure you know this person, because they don't go away, and you want to be responsible in bringing children. I mean, that whole IVF thing continues to change, and I am not going to be surprised when they're able to do DNA, IVF from DNA, but we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, definitely an evolving area of medicine and law. And just as far as, like, there's so many pieces that go into it, like not just what sperm to use, but who's going to carry, how do you make that kind of decision?
So yeah, that's actually really interesting, because when you have females, you have two potential carriers, or you can have one, and
Yeah,
people do
there's
different things. With us, we did testing and discovers, and some things were better and some things were less better in the other one.
hmm
So we decided that Rebecca was gonna carry the baby, and
yeah,
that was actually the best thing for us. But if you're gonna do that, you're gonna have to, obviously, one of the things that they force you to do is go through a whole, checkup to make sure that because there's so much that goes into getting pregnant that is amazing. Um, from the shape of your uterus, if you have
Hmm.
scarring, if you have a miscarriage, that all the things, hormones, chemical balance, everything goes into that. So you kind of look into that, and I, which I didn't know, which I thought it was really super interesting. We have a limited number of eggs that are with every female, and every time you have a period, they shed, and as you get
Hmm.
older, they become, the quality becomes less and less. Apparently, I can't remember, it was at 15 years old or at 17 that you had your best eggs, and I'm like, well, that makes sense from the point of evolution. It makes sense, but
Yeah,
Lord, not when you're there
yeah.
mentally. So
And
yeah.
that's, a reason why, reproductive assistant technology is so common now and just more prevalent is people are just generally having children later in life, and things, unfortunately, especially for women, quickly go downhill. From what I hear, around 35 is a magic number. So it's just kind of how things are with the times, with careers and things like that. So it's definitely something to consider, with having your family or fertility preservation.
Yes, and actually, that is something that I know that gynecologists are talking to females, especially earlier. And obviously, if you get sick or something, all that plays into, if you get cancer,
Right.
they do certain things. But yes, those are things that you have to kind of look into it. And I think nowadays I would recommend, if you're female and you're younger, to appraise yourself of all the issues at this point, so you can make a more educated decision, as opposed to when, if you want to start at 37 or 38 or 40,
Right.
you're
Hmm.
there's going to be limitations, biological limitations to your
Right. For
ability to do
sure.
certain things. Yeah.
And how long did it take for you both to get pregnant once you switched to the IVF option?
So before we did the IVF, we had to go through the IUD, not IUD, I can't remember, but
The
we did an
IUI, the insemination?
IUI, yeah, the
Hmm.
insemination. We tried that,
Hmm.
but it didn't really take. The doctor
Hmm.
wanted us to go through that,
Yeah.
because the IVF is labor intensive and is
Yep.
very, yeah, it impacts you and your body. You have to take a
Yeah.
lot of hormones and everything. You're on the clock constantly. So it took us to treatment. The first treatment had to be stopped because the level of hormones, there was
Hmm.
some issue, some disconnect, and it wasn't going to be fruitful. So that one was abandoned. We scratched it, and then we went into the next one. And they retrieved the egg. They retrieved a whole bunch of eggs. I remember it's like 30 eggs. They do the process, and I remember that at the end of the day, we were only have 11 embryos
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
that
not all the eggs
actually, no,
are viable.
not all the eggs are viable, and they do some testing to ensure, because by law you're not, you can't inseminate, or you can put in eggs that, or embryos that are not viable. So yeah, so when we tried, they got reduced to even 6 or 7,
Yeah.
and I think it was like 4 females and 3 males. Yes.
Okay. So did you know the gender of what you put in for the one that split?
Yes, absolutely. We knew the
Oh,
gender. We knew
cool.
the gender. They gave us they had to do the testing because of Rebecca's age.
I
So
see.
yeah, we knew we had 4 females and 3 boys. That's
Yeah, that's
exactly
crazy. I mean,
what
some people like to know and some don't. So it's always interesting to see what people decide on that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because even though there were 32 eggs, there were 11 embryos, and then some of them didn't. They have to go through a process, and they didn't grow, some of them. So we
Right.
ended up with 7. So yeah, we knew that when we talked. As a matter of fact, we actually, there's been studies in this, and you had to make the decision, which one you want to put in and how many you want to put in. And the doctor had told us, and wanting to anyhow, that you shouldn't put multiples because of the issues, of
Yes.
having multiples. So we
Yes.
had already made that decision. But the doctor, Dr. Patel said, it's been proven statistically that females tend to do better in these situations. And we said, okay, let's start with a female. And
Cool. I had no idea.
yeah,
And there you go. They did very well.
yeah, they did extremely well. But somehow on the fifth day, they multiply, and we didn't really know about it.
And then as far as like, that's a lot of the medical steps that we just spoke about, but going through this and as a lawyer yourself, like what legal concerns did you think of and when you were going through this, or what advice did you kind of know going into it or discover, as far as protecting your parental rights in this process?
Yeah, so actually, as a same-sex couple or as any other couple, whether you're, like mixed race or, biracial couple or anything like that, where, sometimes people tend to, give you the less than stellar treatment, we always were mindful of our associations. For example, go to a doctor that it's open to treating same-sex couples, go to a
Yes.
hospital where we're not going to have an issue. One of the first things that we research is, okay, am I going to be able to be put on the birth certificate? Is that
Hmm.
an issue that can we demand that? Because that actually, obviously, was gonna have impact on insurance and other things. So just the same thing with the marriage. Is the marriage gonna be valid? And the girls were born at Winnie Palmer. They were
Hmm.
excellent.
Oh, wonderful
They
hospital.
there were no issues. They came, they asked us, who's going to be in the birth certificate. They put parents, they
Hmm.
had made the adjustments. They don't have mother and father. They have parent one and parent two. Uh, and then we were put in there. So the insurance kicked in. I was able to be recognized everywhere. So that was one of the things that we talked about. One of the things that when we were talking about this, you commented, maybe we can do a step parent
Parent
adoption.
adoption.
And
Yes.
I wasn't really inclined to do that because I felt like I was less than, just
Mhm.
by
Yeah.
the step parent in this case would have been a misnomer because I'm not the step parent, I'm the parent. So I kind of fought you on that for a little bit, but then due to political reasons and things like that, I said, okay, let's do it because if they change the law, a birth, certificate would not be as compelling as an actual a court order. And
Exactly.
and I reached out to you and went ahead and did the step parent adoption, which candidly, it hurts emotionally, but it was needed legally.
Yeah, I mean, I
And
know it's definitely a little stab to feel like, if you're not to be treated as like, or to have that name identified as step parent. But as, I explained it and explained to any, same-sex female couples, it really is a belts and suspenders. And like you mentioned, with the political climate of any potential of interfering with same-sex marriage and any changes that could happen with in Florida, at least, we have a presumption that any child born into a marriage, being same sex or not, the child will be the child of the parents in that marriage. But there's just so many things going on politically and legally to women's rights that the step parent adoption, like you said, the court order is the strongest protection you can get. A birth certificate is a presumption of parentage, but the court order, has the full faith and credit and the protections of a court order entered by a judge. So it is just one of those extra steps, although you both were placed on the birth certificate. It's
go
really
ahead.
in our industry, it's really just like a best practice. Like it's not like something that if you don't do, like in surrogacy, if you don't go to court, you're not going to be on the birth certificate. I know yours wasn't surrogacy, but this is like just a recommended best practice that we recommend doing.
Yes, and again, we got passports and all that stuff. We never really had any problems, but I do feel more.
Yeah.
I do feel safer. I think it would be a frontal attack is going to be more difficult once there's
And
an
how
adoption order.
and how I know, if people hear adoption and even myself, I would feel a little overwhelmed by the process. I think of like a traditional adoption with home studies and changing minds of, the birth parent. What was the process like for you in Florida?
Oh, the process was really quick. You asked me some questions about. Granted, these kids have always been with me, so it
Yeah,
wasn't like, your regular adoption, or I wasn't,
right.
coming
We
from
weren't terminating anyone's rights or birth father
no.
or things like
So it's a matter of, you filled out the application stating that they have been where they've been, that I was in the birth certificate, and it was seamless. I really didn't do much except, filling out the paperwork, and Rebecca, and you went ahead and got us a hearing, and the judge issued an order, talked to us for 2 seconds, not
that.
2 seconds, but
Yeah.
literally a few
Thankfully,
minutes.
it's not, yeah, it's not like a hard hitting, litigated kind of case. And in fact, I think the judges in these step parent adoptions are happy to see us because they go through, if you recall, it was divorce after divorce and then us. And she was like,
Oh
oh,
yeah,
what a breath of fresh air to have this hearing now.
and it was really hard because there were so many people that were getting divorced, or a parent was lost. And
Mm,
and these kids were orphaned, and it just really broke my heart. But in this case, it was yeah, it was a celebration, and actually it was done um in this May, no, or
wow,
maybe
I'd have to
last
look.
May. I can't remember. It was
Yeah,
last
at
May.
time I'm in a
Yeah, it's
little bit
last
of a
May.
time warp. Yeah, but it definitely
Yeah,
during, Zoom protocols and
yeah, it was
um
COVID time. Yeah, it was COVID time. Yeah, you're right.
yeah.
You're
So,
right.
I mean, I'm just so happy that everything, worked out for you and you have all of that, behind you. I guess looking back over your process, do you have any tips that you might want to share to other female couples or and just generally anyone going through IVF and family building, just as like lessons you might have learned from it?
Well, I think the first thing is that you have to have a candid and honest discussion with your partner and work out
Mhm.
all the expectations, because this is a trying process. It's a process that you're going to have uh, tremendous losses. And sometimes one day you're going to be up, and then the next day you're going to be down, and there's no certainty of what's going to happen.
For sure.
Second is that you have to research whomever it's going to be, you're going to be using, and because again, the process is as good as the entity that does it. If you have people who are problematic, or places that don't call you back, and things of that nature,
Mhm.
that makes the process worse. Third, have friends and have colleagues that have gone through, ask questions, because it's better to make meaningful, decisions, that not to, because you're ashamed or whatever, not find out things that you can find out. 'Cause these are the people that are gonna, um, support you. Like, for example, for
Absolutely.
us, it was a very positive process, and being able to talk to you about everything from, A to Z, because you had been there, you know,
Thanks.
so you understood, and help us. And sometimes it's a matter of just listening. It's not even giving your opinion, it's just listening to somebody that
Mhm.
just needs an emotional outlet. Um,
Yeah, it helps you feel less alone. Like I know when I shared my story, I didn't feel as isolated in what we were going through. People reached out, almost thanking me for sharing. It's like, wow, someone I know is also having a hard time. You just don't see it all the time on, social media. You see the baby pictures, but you don't always hear the backstory.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of stigma attached to it, and I think it's fine. People do have problems conceiving for many reasons, and it's okay to talk about it. And the third point would be is do the research with regard to insurance because a lot of the things have changed, and
Mm,
some of the and wherever you are, sometimes the state requires you to be covered, and that's an advantage because otherwise it can cost some quite a money, and it could be cost prohibitive in some instances. So kind of just do your research on that.
yeah, and I think the takeaway from everything you're saying is do it before you're pregnant. Look into the legal, look into the medical, look into the, insurance so that you better to know at the beginning than to be shuffling around at the end in panic mode.
Yeah, and that's why it helps to, use good people. And I say this to my clients all the time. You try to be cheap on something, ended up costing you more if
Yeah,
had you
for
done your
sure.
due diligence. You get what
Absolutely.
you pay for sometimes, and these are not the things that you want to go cheap on, or
Right.
and there's a lot of reasonable priced people. It's just that this is not going to be like here, let me give you $100 and yeah, I can do A to Z. That just doesn't work that way. That
Exactly.
there's a lot of things, but again, the most important thing is, be candid with your person, because this is a long journey, and it will try you as a couple. And if you're not steady, the last thing you want to do is bring a child into the world. So you,
Right. Be another hearing in front of the judges that we saw.
yeah, yeah, it happens. It's sad, but it happens.
Of course. No, I mean, there's a lot that goes into this. It's a hard time, and sometimes people do need counseling and, guidance to help support through this hard time for sure. And since I have you on the show, being that, you went through this personally, but you're also an employment lawyer, in line with what you were saying about knowing about your insurance and things to research at the beginning, I do have a lot of clients that ask me, both parents going through this and even surrogates, how will they know if they'll have paid medical leave, or what's called, FMLA, for when they have to leave to have the baby, or go out when they're pregnant and have the delivery. So I'd love to learn just a little overview of FMLA and how you know when that applies.
Well, yeah, FMLA is a federal law. It's called Family Medical Leave Act. The birth of a child, or even some associated, things associated with the pregnancy, are covered. And it may or may not apply to you depending on several things. First, the number of people that your employer has. If your employer has 50 or more likely than not that you are going to be, that they're going to be offer FMLA. However, you have to have worked there for at least 1 year and at least 12,050 hours, uh,
Okay.
and then you'll be able to use it. And it's unpaid, so it's 12 weeks of unpaid leave, and that is available. That's something you have to look at it. Now, a lot of states do have their own kind of mini FMLA, or they give you paid leave, and like states like California, Massachusetts, New York,
Hmm.
so that you need to inquire into that. Also, the last place where I would inquire is your company. Companies
Okay.
can provide, well, they're required to provide the minimum that's required by law, but they can provide more. Some companies, many companies have paid, leave that cover, birth and I am escaping me, the time where you want to bonding time with your
Yeah.
child as well. Uh, you have to see how long they have it. And sometimes it's more than 12 weeks, sometimes it's 6 months, but it requires you have to work certain amount of time. So I would just first start with my company, then look into the state and then the federal, and kind of see it. But the easiest way is to contact your benefits,
Okay.
person
Yeah.
first.
And does Florida at this time have a medical leave policy? I know you mentioned some other states.
No, no, Florida has the FMLA.
Got it. The
So
federal law only. And does
it
FMLA or certain companies provide benefits for like the spouse of the person delivering ever?
Yeah. So FMLA doesn't. So it used to be that only if we're talking about same-sex couple, only like the mother that gave the child would have done because same-sex marriage wasn't recognized. Now that has changed, so it's
Mhm.
the parent can use it. So, for example, I mean, Rebecca wasn't working, but I was working. I could take leave to
Okay,
be with my children, the birth of a child, because
good.
first Greenspoon Marder recognized same-sex couples long time ago before it was legal, but as a result of the Supreme Court decision, the marriage was recognized, so federal law applied to that.
Right. Okay, great. So any legal parent can receive certain benefits as far as leave and protecting their job for a certain period of time.
Yeah, so and that's a good point. It's legal parent. So if you're cohabitating,
Hmm.
and you can prove that you're the birth, if you're it's the birth certificate, you may be able to get away. But
Right,
people that are not, especially in same-sex couple,
right,
you might not be able to partake in that.
right. And another reason why to consider what you did as a step parent adoption for married couples, the process when you're not married is called a second parent adoption. That's another available option to get a court order when someone goes through this process as an unmarried couple. So lots of things
Yes,
to think about. Well, this was so enlightening. I just really appreciate you sharing some professional advice and your personal story. I'm just so happy it worked out for you. And it's truly an amazing process. Not easy, but really, really special. And I really enjoyed working with you both and being there through, certain steps of the process. It was really cool to see.
well, I'm really happy that you were there. Really, you were very, very, we owe you a debt of gratitude that we're never gonna
You
be able to
know,
repay.
that's my
So
pleasure, and it's why I, go into this area of law based upon, my own experience and trying to help others. So thank you for allowing me to help, and thank you for joining the podcast today. And have a great holiday.
thank you, everybody, and you
Thank you so
too.
much.
Okay, bye bye.